What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. I am one of your hosts for today, Simon Voyanos, aka Coach V.
And I am also here, Kodey Stoffer.
And we continue our top 5 seniors list here, talking about every single position. We go back to the defensive side of the ball, and we're going to talk about edge rushers. These are players who are on the outside of offensive tackles, at least for the most part. I know some guys will line up kind of all over the place, but these are guys that you'll line up basically on the outsides on defense, and whether they put their hand in the ground or not doesn't really matter as much, just like I said, as long as they're on that outside. And so we're going to talk about them. This is the class of 2024. By the way, we're recording this on December 10th, 2023, just in case any issues come up with that when we're talking about Outlook and stuff. But let me go ahead and break down how this is going to work here in case you are not familiar. But basically, myself and Kodey, we evaluate a whole ton of players based on their film, what we've seen live, and most of these players we've seen a number of different times over the years already. So we're pretty familiar with all these guys. And then we're going to go ahead and give them grades for the 10 categories that we got. Let me just go down the line. Speed and finesse moves is 1. Tackling, run stopping, power rushing, release and first step is another. Agility / footwork is another. Hit power, strength, pass coverage, size / frame. And then we add all of that up to get our overall grade here, giving them grades anywhere from 1 to 10. 1 to 3 is needed improvement. 4 to 6 is about average. 7 to 8 is about above average. The closer you get to 8, the closer you are to about a 3-star talent at that certain skill. 8 to 9 is good to great. That's your 3-star to 4-star skill level right there. And then 9 to 10, that is 5-star level. Very good to elite. Now, I will say this. We do need to rework this. Just, take care of one category. But for the most part, this is pretty accurate. And we're also going to go ahead and project where these guys are going to play or where they can play on the next level. But anyways, after myself and Kodey add up all those grades and get our overall grades for our individual evaluations, then we go ahead and average it out. So I add my grade to Kodey's, divided by 2, and then whoever has the highest grades out of all the players we evaluated goes number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as you can expect there. And to go ahead and kind of add a baseline to this thing, we evaluated 2 guys who are going to go ahead and play on the next level. The Power 5 level, they are 5 stars, considered some of the best in the country. One is Elijah Rushing. He's an Oregon commit. I had him graded out at an 84.4. And then we also graded out Duncanville, shout out Dallas, very own Colin Simmons, who graded out at an 85.1. I believe he's also a Texas commit, so hook him there. And he's a special player for that Duncanville squad that I believe is going to state this time of year here. I could be mistaken, though. I need to check again. But we have those guys as references so that we can not only compare our guys to the best in the state, but the best in the country as a whole and better project them moving forward. Kodey, is there anything that I missed here or anything you want to add on before we get to our number 5 senior edge rusher here in Colorado?
No, I think that you hit everything, and honestly, I do think that we are continuing to improve this just a little bit more, and I think that that's going to be reflected in how strict these grades are, I guess, for lack of a better word, in describing our evaluation process. But this was a fun group to watch, and we've been watching some of these guys for 3 years get some experience on that level. So Coach V, take it away on that first guy.
Yes. So the number 5 senior edge rusher in the class of 2024 here in Colorado is Jordan Ochoa, the 6'4", 230-pound defensive end from Castleview. This was a kid that we've been able to watch develop over more so, I would say, the last 2 years. Had a really good junior year, and then his senior year, he followed up on that. Let me go ahead and highlight some of the I guess his best ratings that I gave him, and some things that are a part of his brand of football. So number one, the highest grade I gave him was an 8.7, and I gave that to him in two categories. One was agility and footwork. The other one was size and frame. First things first, 6'4", 230. He looks it. He's a good, lean pass rusher out there. That's about where you want most of your D1 guys to be at, and there's a lot of work that can be done over there. There's a lot of NFL players, coming out of high school who start at that 6'4", 230-pound area, maybe a little bit less sometimes too, so gotta love that. And then talking about his agility, this is a speed rusher here. He's real quick off the ball, and in space he's really tough to shake. I also gave him an 8.7 for speed and finesse moves, just coming off that edge here. He's gonna apply a lot of pressure just by accelerating that clock, collapsing the pocket. For the most part, there's really no offensive tackle in the state that has been able to go step for step for him as far as speed and agility goes. He is one of the fastest guys, and I think the fastest guy rated here, or ratings wise here, on this top 5 list. And so that's really his bread and butter, speed and agility, and there's really nobody that could stop him. And there's some great offensive linemen in this state, but as far as that quickness goes, he's pretty unmatched for the most part. Now, before I go on to some of the other things here, Kodey, what are some things you really like about Jordan Ochoa's game here? And then if you want, you could go ahead and talk about some areas of improvement as well.
Yeah, so I'd have to agree. My highest rated category was speed/finesse moves at an 8.8. It is actually the highest grading in that category out of any of the players that we evaluated in this senior class. He does a great job of just hitting top speed immediately, basically, off that edge. Doesn't really need a running start like some of these other guys do to get to that top speed. And like you said, not a lot of offensive tackles showing the ability to really counter that this season. And, a lot of teams just end up going the other direction away from Jordan Ochoa. And that's kind of reflected in his stats from his junior to senior year, that people will just, no, we're just not going to go that way anymore. And, I think that a huge part of that is his first step, and I got an 8.5 on that. So that's pretty critical. And then, for his agility/footwork, I have it in at 8.4 because if they are, taking massive leaps back to get into that pass pro and get set against Jordan, he could do a great job of just using his feet to put them in a misdirection kind of blender and cause some serious issues in that regard. So I think that everything that you said is completely accurate, and his just overall athleticism and footwork just reeks of planning and just absurd ability. I think that his hands are insanely fast, and they smack away any offensive lineman's hands extremely fast. And his first jab step and counter step are very good at creating distance to go unscathed into backfields and cause some pretty interesting issues in that way. So I think that he's probably the best example of, like, quote unquote, a modern day pass rusher who can wreck games and create opportunities for his teammates using some speed. He has a spin move in his bag, and his hands are flashing quick. He's good at dipping his shoulder and getting lower as well, so playing kind of that angle game as well. And I think that for the run stopping here, it's not one of his higher rated categories, but it's still at a 7 because his arms are so long and he does such a great job of standing up defender or offensive linemen and getting into the backfield and making plays that way, that his run stopping, despite not making a ton of tackles for loss, he has very strong ability to force run stopping and whatnot in that way. So those were some of the things that I liked. His tackling is pretty solid at a 7.8. I think that he does a great job of using those long arms and wrapping up and dragging ball carriers down to the ground and whatnot. Coach V, you mind if I talk about some of the areas of improvement while I'm here?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, great. So for some of the areas of improvement, I think that one category here that's going to drag down a lot of these guys and is just going to remain kind of consistent is pass coverage. I do have it rated out of 5.9 because he does show abilities to make plays in screen game and doesn't get completely sucked in. That's both wide receiver screen and halfback screen, mid screen, tunnel screen, all of those screens. He does a great job of doing that, and he can buzz the flats as well, which I think is great and obviously versatile and whatnot. Just not asked to do it a whole ton. And then I do have some concerns about his hit power and his strength. Both of these categories were hit power at a 6.1 and strength at a 6.8. I feel like he doesn't, and this kind of ties into his power rush as well. When he's actually against offensive linemen, he doesn't get a huge push, honestly. And, you know, he doesn't really pack like a big hit when tackling. You know, his tackling, like I said, pretty consistent, mainly consistent pad level and whatnot, but it's not, I don't see a Jordan Ochoa hit and go, oh, like I do some of these other guys where they just pack such a punch. And it's actually the lowest grade out of the top 5 guys on this list for hit power for me personally. And, you know, I would hope that, you know, his frame can, I guess, like, kind of, he can use that frame a little bit more to just create some more power. I don't know if it's a pad level thing. I don't know if it's a weight room thing. I'm not sure what the issue is, but I just don't see a lot of strength or power from Jordan Ochoa in either the pass or the run defend game, if I'm being completely honest. Coach V, am I way off base, or do you see what I see?
No, we definitely see the same thing here for Jordan Ochoa. Yeah, my lowest grades were also 6 for power rushing. I mean, he just doesn't really use it a whole bunch, and why would you if you're faster than everyone? So I totally get it. It's just not really out there. And then pass coverage as well. I mean, if I don't see someone, you know, out there in pass coverage, I usually just give them a 5 anyways, and so that's pretty much most of these guys on this list. So don't look into that one too much anyways. But yeah, I mean, look, I think he is really somebody that can afford to put on a lot more weight. If he could put on like almost 15 to 20 pounds, I think he'd be in a perfect spot here. His hit power wasn't great for me either. I mean, I gave him a 7.5. I think some of it is definitely pad level, but some of it is just like, I mean, I don't know. Some guys are just not like that, and it's fine. You know, I mean, as long as you get the job done and you get in the backfield and get TFLs and stuff and sacks and be disruptive, that's really what matters the most, I would say, as an edge rusher. And if you could get some turnovers, I mean, that's being disruptive too, right? And so, well, that being said, I really do feel like he could afford to put on more weight. If he can, that would actually put him probably pretty close to first on this list, because as far as ratings go, I mean, I gave him a 76.3, or my number one guy is only like barely 2 points ahead of him. So there is that. I'm just going to say that there. Some of my other ratings I want to go over real quick. 8.2 for tackling, 8.1 for run stop, 8.4 for release first step. That could actually go up a little bit here moving forward, but we'll just have to see about that. 7 for strength. Like I said, I think he could get stronger here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I also want to go ahead and I'm thinking back to this clip I once saw. Oh, Cody, you're going to have to remind me the name of this Arapaho lineman, the one that's like 6'10". Do you know who I'm talking about?
Crisp or Crispy, yeah.
Yeah, Brendan Crisp. So, first off, shout out to 60 Academy. He is one of those guys. I saw 101 between those two, which was a great film to look at because both of them are great. Crisp was probably going to be a top 5 tackle for us. And, you know, offensive linemen in Colorado are always really good. But watching it, there was one rep that he lost. And it's just because he got stood up, you know, just straight up. And then the one that he did win, he got the jump on him. And so, you know, that's a good, you know, player to be doing 101s against. He is probably for sure either a Power 5 or Group of 5, for sure a D1 guy. So that's good stuff to be going up against. Plus he's 6'10" too. But, you know, for Jordan here, for him to just really rely on that speed does make me a little nervous. And so I'd love for him to get a bit stronger here. And if he can, then I really think his game goes to the next level. And so that's kind of where his potential is for me here, I really feel like he is a D1 guy, and, give him a year or two in the right program, conditioning and eating well and getting bigger. I think he can really, really be somebody that could develop into a star for a lot of teams. Kodey, what do you think about that? What was your overall grade? And then we could go ahead and talk about outlook here as well if you want.
Yeah, so I think that everything that you said, I gotta agree with. I mean, to run through the rest of my grades, 8.8, obviously speed finesse, 7.8 tackling, 7 run stop, 7.1 power, 8.5 release first step, 8.4 agility footwork, 6.1 hit power, 6.8 strength, 5.9 pass coverage, and 8.7 frame. 75.1 overall here for Ochoa, and I gotta agree with everything that you said. I think that rep against, or those reps against Brendan were awesome to watch and good insight, because it showed everything that Ochoa is and isn't. You know what I mean? It showed that once he has that speed and he can use it in a very short burst and it can be overwhelming, that he can win. You know what I mean? But at the same time, there's just something missing as far as being a complete package and whatnot, and matching up as well as you would maybe want him to for future matchups and stuff like that. So, yeah, I gotta agree with all of that. And then as far as looking ahead goes, it's kind of interesting because Jordan was committed to Wyoming, I want to say before the season started, or in the spring or something like that. I want to say he was still a junior when he was committed, but then he actually decommitted, I say somewhat recently, just in the lifespan of recruiting, but he decommitted from Wyoming, and right now haven't seen a whole ton outside of that. When you look at 24/7 and go through that, it says that he had been offered by Florida A&M, Jackson State, and Washington State. I know that he had a couple of game day visits with CU, on November 1st, I want to say, and he's been in talks with Nebraska and visited them and whatnot. Just hasn't received quite offers yet on those fronts. But I think that obviously for these Power 5 schools, he also received an offer from New Mexico State. That's a pretty recent one, but I digress. He is somebody who, I think the Power 5s and Group of 5s obviously see the upside of having a speed rusher, especially somebody like Jordan is somebody that you could rotate in on third downs to cause issues, right? I think that he's somebody who maybe I don't want to start right now just because I don't think that he's a 3-down guy. But I think that depth-wise, he's not somebody bad to have on your roster and, get you some hurries every now and then, just kind of throughout the season. Nothing too overwhelming, but he's somebody that, because of his top-end speed rushing abilities, I think he is somebody that could see the field maybe a little bit sooner than later. But I think that kind of that Wyoming kind of Group of 5 level is more where Ochoa lies as a prospect.
I will say this. It's a little hard to project where he's going to be at because, Group of 5, Power 5, it really doesn't matter at this point. It's either you're a Big Ten guy or you're an SEC guy, and then you have everyone else before the FCS. And so with that being said, I kind of feel like he could play on that Big Ten SEC level as a rotational guy. Now, he's not going to play right away, and he's probably going to have to sit at least 2 years, if not longer. But he could get in there, and like you said, I agree. He could be a great rotational guy where you need a little bit more speed, you need someone fresh, and, he knows his role, hey, go get the quarterback. He could go do it. He could go do it. and he could give you something out there to relieve some guys out there, and maybe even develop into more down the line here. Group of 5 for sure. I mean, give him a year or two, and I think he could be a legitimate rotational guy, if not a starter. And then, I mean, this is the inner fan in me, but if he was ever offered by an FCS or chosen FCS, I think he's probably a day one starter. And then you kind of just live with what's there and go on, honestly. Because he does have a lot of talent here. There's no doubt about that. The speed is elite. Just straight up, it's elite. You know, just his release and everything after that, it's elite. And so when he's on it, he's on it. And so we'll see. By the time this episode comes out, he probably would have committed by now. Or at least I would think he would. So there's that. But, you know, we'll just have to see what happens.
You know, I'm excited to see.
Have more to add. Sorry, go on.
I'm just excited to see where his next step is and see him make plays on the college level. So.
Yeah, he belongs, you know, plain and simple.
Yeah, for sure. So, number 4 time?
Yeah, you got it. Unless you want me to do it.
No, I got it here.
Go for it.
At the number 4 spot here in the class of 2024 on PMC's top 5 edge rushers, we have out of Green Mountain, Austin Contreras here, the edge / kind of outside linebacker-ish hybrid player here. And Austin is fun to watch both. His film is very well put together, so watch how Austin's film is put together to take some notes and whatnot. But also, IRL, he is just an absolute monster here. Talking about some of the things that he does best, you know, in his 6'2", 230 frame, he is a brutal hammer to bring down upon others. I mean, for his hit power and his tackling, I have it at an 8.3 and an 8.6 respectively. Tackling wise, he's somebody who consistently wraps up and tackles through opposing ball carriers at the waist. Holy cow, his pad level is so consistent, and his wrapping up is so consistent, and he drives his feet. Oh my gosh, I thought I was going insane watching a handful of these other players make tackles. And not necessarily in this list, but you know, just watching through defensive film and just watching tackles this year, I see a lot of guys that just tackle way too high. Austin is so consistent at wrapping up and doing it at the right pad level. At an 8.6, he's actually my highest graded tackler on this list. So I think that's worth a shout out here. And then hit power, he's my hardest rated hitter here in the top 5. I mean, he just packs a wallop every time he hits somebody. And, you know, while doing that, he also, in run defending and run stopping, which I have graded at an 8.2, one of his highest grades, he does a great job of reading the offense. I feel like a lot of the time you can see, you know, that he can carry, like everyone watches film, right? But the people who can actually carry over what they watched into the game, that is special. And Austin does that. You can see that he can tell plays are happening before they're even being ran. And he finds that open gap, and he just absolutely rocks the ball carrier. And he just, oh my God, he lights them up. And I am not jealous of anybody that Austin Contreras lays out. And, you know, he does so, like I said, through that run stopping. He also does a great job of using arm placement to ward off blockers and make plays in the run game. So he just does a great job of using his vision and whatnot and getting to where the play is heading. And then agility / footwork wise, he can just dance circles around some of these guys. I mean, I have it graded at an 8.2. He does a great job of using a jab step and then getting around, you know, different tackles and guards and whatnot. And, you know, his agility and ability to change direction is also a huge strength for him in the pass game. Now, while the grade of 6.7 is one of his lower ones, it is the highest rated pass grade on this list. That's why I kind of mentioned the fact that, you know, he's an edge who can drop back into that outside backer spot. He's ran routes with, you know, receivers across the field. He's passed off different zones and whatnot. So he shows solid knowledge of running it. He just doesn't necessarily have like the playmaking aspect going for him as far as, you know, making interceptions and stuff like that. But he can also bat passes at the line using great anticipation and disrupt the game in that way as well. So it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not afraid to ask him to do it, and that's why it's at a 6.7, is because, it's something where it's like, all right, if I run a stunt or something like that, or ask him to drop like a simple middle zone, I'm not like, oh crap, we could really give up a lot of yards on this play. It's just, it's up to the design and the matchup and stuff. It's not necessarily an Austin weakness, I should say. And then some of the other categories here that are rated pretty well, speed/finesse moves, as well as release/first step, I have at a 7.8 and a 7.7 as well. I think that he's solid at both of those. Obviously, he doesn't, I wouldn't say that he has like a first step that's super explosive like an Ochoa and something like that. But I think he gets off the ball just fine and, can beat opposing pass blockers or run blockers just off the edge, using that speed, using that first step and whatnot there. And then, he has a little bit of hand fighting, a little bit of a swim and a rip as well for finesse moves, and using that footwork as well to kind of jab and evade around defenders, I think is where his strength is as far as, speed/finesse. Coach V, what do you think of this analysis? And then what do you think are some areas of improvement for Contreras as well?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And this is a kid that we've been watching the last 2 years pretty closely here because of how good this Green Mountain defense and team has been as a contender in 3A, which is already tough to do with so many offenses that are much more evolved than a lot of other offenses in the state. And so there's a lot more responsibility there for a guy like Austin Contreras. And gotta agree here. Let me talk about my highest grades. I gave him an 8.7 for run stopping, 8.5 for tackling. When it comes to stopping the run, in my opinion, he's elite. He's up there. You just watch it, especially when you just watch his film from his senior year. Like, just look at that, and look at the number of games he's played against some pretty good running teams, like Lutheran being one of them. And that was a game that I got to watch in full and made some notes on him there. But, just the way he's able to hold down his blocker there and, be able to shed it and be tough and not give up ground and set that edge, it's big time. He doesn't get pushed around. He just does it, and you're not going to be able to. And to have a guy that strong and still athletic out there is huge and allows your defense to do a lot when you could stop those outside runs and really funnel everything inside there. And so he was key to that for Green Mountain these last 2 years. That was what really stood out to me, and that's his brand of football, just hard-nosed football. Like you said, gets great pad level when he's engaging and tackling and all that stuff. Some guys, you just don't gotta teach that to. Some guys just naturally have great pad levels when they play football, no matter the situation, and he's one of those guys. And so you gotta love that. He's the type of guy that he's gonna get in there and he's gonna do the dirty work, and he's gonna allow other guys to make really flashy plays because of how great he is out there and how good he is in that system. And really any defensive system will needs a guy that can hold it down, and that's what he does. Now, talking about some areas of improvement here, you touched on some of them. Power rushing, I gave him a 7.1 there. Pass coverage, gave him a 6, and actually that 6 in pass coverage is the highest rating any edge rusher on this list got. Like you said, he obviously understands those situations. I saw him against a Lutheran, who obviously is a great spread team that passes the ball, that'll go tempo, and he held down his side. They weren't able to get a lot of those quick little short gain stuff that they are used to, and then kind of had to evolve their game more to, okay, well, we can't run it outside, we can't throw it short, we need to run it inside and go deep. And for the most part, that is pretty much outside of his responsibility from there, because he's doing such a good job shutting down that edge, playing the short game. And so I can't rave enough about it and how versatile he is there. But, just didn't see him make a whole ton of turnovers, force a lot of turnovers, or do a ton there. And part of it is because he's not asked to do it a whole ton unless they really need to and are playing a spread team like Lutheran, who, is going to take some guys out of position. And so I even though we are talking about areas of improvements, I do want to make that clear, though, that even though one of his lowest grades is a 6 in pass coverage, he could do it. And he's somebody that is really versatile and could fit into a lot of different defenses on the next level. Now, before we talk about the future and whatnot, I'm just going to go down the line with the rest of my grades. Gave him a 7.8 for speed and finesse moves. Same grade for release and first step. 8.3 for agility and footwork. He moves pretty well for his size. 8.1 hit power, 7.5 strength. Frame and size, gave him an 8.2. It's about a 3-star. I mean, there's a lot of 6'2", 230-pound edge rushers out there, so it's pretty on par, pretty average, but still, where you want, pretty much the baseline where you want these edge rushers if you're a D1 looking for guys to play that position. So there you go there. And then before we move on here, I do want to just reemphasize as far as finesse moves and power rushing moves goes, I feel like he has a little bit of a bag. You see him pull it out when he's block shedding, but when he has to initiate the contact and, go ahead and pass rush, it's just not quite there. I think it's a timing thing, and that's just something he needs to work on. Now, I don't know if he's ever going to be an elite, pass rusher as far as that timing goes, but he could definitely be a lot better than where he's at right now, and that could boost him pretty significantly here. But altogether, Austin Contreras, he's a tough, hard-nosed football player who's great against the run and, does his job in pretty much all aspects of the game as far as edge rushers and outside linebackers go. Cody, do you agree with what I just had to say there? And, what are some of your ratings / where do you project him moving forward?
Yeah, no, once again, just to echo, while his pass coverage would quote unquote be listed as a weakness, it's really not. Honestly, he's completely fine in the pass game. And then, yeah, his power rushing just is very unproven to me, honestly. I don't see him really. All these other guys show at least an instance of really just overpowering someone and putting them kind of in the QB or running back's lap. And I just don't really see that a whole ton with Austin. So he kind of got dinged a little bit there in my grades. And looking at some of the other grades, his strength also, I don't have graded super high. I have it graded at a 7.1. So I think that while his frame is completely fine, I do want to see him just get a little bit stronger and see kind of what that leads to. So when I run down the entire list, speed / finesse, 7.8, tackling, 8.6, run stop, 8.2, power rushing, 6.3, release first step, 7.7, agility footwork, 8.2, hit power, 8.3, strength, 7.1, pass coverage, 6.7, frame, 8.4, makes for a 77.3, and if that's averaged out with your score, that puts it at a 76.65. I think that he's going to be fine on the next level, but one thing that was a little concerning while doing this kind of research here, Coach V, I can't find any offers between his Instagram or his Twitter, but it looks like he's kind of jumping on it. It kind of looks like he just recently started focusing on it a little bit, maybe. Yeah, when I look at his Twitter, there's no offers yet, and, it's December, so I'm just a little worried that he's not getting the traction that maybe he deserves here, and that tends to happen sometimes with some of these lower classifications, and that's not going to be something that's, new as we continue to look at any of these, but I think it is just worth mentioning here that, I think that Austin Contreras can play on the next level and be at least an FCS guy, honestly. But I feel like his looks, if I had to guess where his looks are going to come from, it's probably going to be on the D2 Colorado level, if I'd have to guess. Do you think that's out of pocket to say, just knowing the history of recruiting in this state, and especially prospects on the 3A or below classification?
No, I agree, which is a little unfortunate because he's a great player, man. And he might also be a guy that, you could potentially move to inside linebacker and stuff like that as well. And I think he'd probably be okay there. But it just really depends. I mean, you really just need a coach to take a chance on him. Because here's the thing about Austin. When it comes to edge rushers, the pass rushing ability is definitely something that I feel like colleges value the most when it comes to those type of players and positions. And so even though you're a good run stopper, and even elite run stopper, that's just not as flashy, right? And so it is a little bit more of a handful to try to train a guy up if he's not a natural pass rusher, because, it is a passing game now. And so with that being said, that might be working against him a little bit here, just not being the greatest pass rusher out there. Probably one of the weaker ones on this list, but does everything else at a pretty high level. And so we'll see. I definitely see him as a D2 guy. Colorado D2, I think, is fair. That's high D2. A School of Mines or, a CSU Pueblo, they could take a guy like him and plug him in there, and he would be a big part of a potential championship defense. Whether it's national championship, conference, whatever, he is that type of player that you could plug in there, and he will do his job right. And you got to feel good about that if you are one of those D2s, because you really are getting a steal here. Now, I do think he could play on the FCS level, but he's going to have to sit, and you're going to have to develop those pass rushing skills there a little bit longer. It might take 2 years, maybe 3, and you know how it is. Some coaching staffs, they just don't have that long of a timeline when it comes to developing guys, especially with the access to the transfer portal. So that's kind of how I see it. I hope he does find a spot here. I know his teammate Blake Westland, who plays inside linebacker, just recently got offered by Northern Colorado. If Contreras got some sort of opportunity, whether it's a scholarship or PWO from Northern Colorado, I think he could pretty quickly earn a spot there and find a good role as a tough guy that could help lead a defense and just be one of those glue guys. Like I said, one of those hard-nosed football players who are going to do the dirty work and let the other guys get the flashy plays while he goes ahead and takes care of business and puts somebody's face in the ground. Plain and simple. And it's just one of those tone setters. Is that fair to say, Cody? That's my hope, obviously. But, we'll just have to see here moving forward.
No, I think that there will be opportunity, honestly, and I think that when the opportunity comes knocking, he just has to be ready for it and make the most of it. And and I don't doubt that he's going to be able to do that, and I don't doubt that he'll be a guy who can make plays on the next level. So that is our number 4 edge player here, Austin Contreras. Coach V, do you or do I want to talk about this number 3 guy here?
I'll do it. I really want to do this one.
Send it.
Not, I'm just going to do it. All right, okay, bet. All right, the number 3 class of 2024 edge rusher here in Colorado is Lyman's very own Traden Marks, the 6'4", 210-pound edge rusher here. A lot lighter than a lot of these other guys here, but still standing at 6'4". He's a big dude. And this is a kid like Contreras and Ochoa who really came onto the scene the last 2 years specifically here. And I've got to watch him a number of times, and he never fails to impress. And so let's just go ahead and hop into it here. To start out, there is a lot of things that he just does right. I'm just going to put that out there. But his highest grades for me, I gave him an 8.6 for run stopping, 8.5 for tackling. Speaking of great players against the run, just like Austin Contreras, Traden Marks is right up there. But the difference, this is a pretty big difference, between him and a lot of the other guys, not only on this list, but especially in the higher classifications, is that he is game planned against, insanely. A lot of the coaches out there here on the 1A level know that when Traden Marks is coming to town, they got to put 3 bodies on him. Number 1, you got to put the tackle on him. Number 2, you got to put either a guard or maybe a bigger fullback tight end on him. And then number 3, you got to chip him with somebody. And that is basically the Marks rules, the Jordan rules version of Colorado here, the Marks rules here of playing against a Traden Marks. You got to have 3 bodies on him. Because if you don't, If you don't, that's going to be an issue. And, when you look at his junior year film compared to his senior year film, junior year, some guys maybe didn't know about him as much. Later in the season, that obviously changed as he played better teams and, teams had more access to that film there. But early on, I mean, when this dude was 1-on-1, he just go and slam a dude. Like, go get out there and just, God, just make a play, man. And he did that over and over and over again. And, teams eventually learned. And then you look at his senior year film, and he's getting chipped all the time. And against the run, this is the thing that really stood out to me. I mean, he holds his ground so well. And not only does he hold his ground, but he gets a pretty good push against double teams, against triple teams even. And he gets so many tackles for loss in the backfield. And I already know there's some idiot out there that's like, oh, it's 1A, it's 1A. Well, yeah, it's still hard to beat a triple team, especially when one of those guys is bigger than you, or at least weighs more than you. And then the other two guys at least weigh either your weight or more. And usually it's triple still, the frame and weight and all that when you want to do the math there. And so it's still really hard to do, and he just does such a good job against the run, especially when he faced that adversity this season. And it was all year long. Like, every team did that to him, and he continuously won. And that's why they were state champions this year, because you had a guy you could just go get in there and get it done. As far as tackling goes, I mean, he's a great tackler, extremely reliable. He's going to do his job there. Kodey, before I throw it to you here, I do want to mention his pass rushing skills. Gave him a 8.3 for power rushing and an 8.1 for first step and release here. As far as power rushing go, I feel like this season he really converted more into more of a power rusher, whereas last season you see him rely on his speed a lot more. As a power rusher, I mean, he gets a great push out there. A lot of dips and rips and stuff like that that just requires strength. And you see him doing this on the outside so that he doesn't give up too much room here, using up all that space trying to go around. And it's just efficient, man. It's just efficient, plain and simple. He is going up against some bigger dudes. And like I said, even when he's pass rushing, he's getting double teamed. He's getting, chipped. And he has enough power to fight through it and still get sacks. That's the insane part about it. As far as release and first step go, I will acknowledge this. I gave him an 8.1, but this could definitely be higher because I feel like his junior year, when you look at his release and first step, he was flying. And part of it is probably because he's not getting triple teamed every single play, which is, fair, right? But this year, he was definitely triple team, and you could see that kind of wear on him a little bit and affect his first step just a little bit. And so, that's nothing that a conditioning program can't fix, to be honest with you. But that first step is definitely, it's up there with the best in the state for sure. So there you go there. Just wanted to make sure I address that before we go ahead and, kind of switch it up here. But Kodey, what do you think about what I had to say about Trayden here? I just wanted to, pick out a couple things. And, what are some areas of improvements that you have as well after you go over your strengths about Trayden Marks?
Yeah, so I think it's worth mentioning that Trayden kind of popped onto the scene for us when 1 week he won Playmaker of the Week last year during his junior year. And this is back when, he had no presence online, at all. Just, the stats and whatnot. And it was something ridiculous. I want to say it was 5 sacks or 6 sacks in a game. Just something, a stupid amount of sacks. And so I was like, well, that's Playmaker of the Week for 1A. I guess it's kind of a gimme. But also it kind of made me really want to see, all right, is this legit? And so I made it out to Strasburg that year for Strasburg versus Lyman. Both these teams were undefeated headed into that game. And I had some questions, I was like, all right, let's get a look and see how, their running back is looking these days and see where Lyman is at, because Lyman was kind of in a weird spot where they had a lot of seniors from the past year graduate, and this was a very young team. A lot of juniors, I should say, and sophomores starting. This was in 2020, the 2022 season, and Marks lived up to the hype when I watched that game. He was dominating, and this is somebody who, by the way, not only, as Coach V mentioned, is getting triple or double teams pretty consistently, but he's also an offensive lineman for them that paves the way for, running lanes and stuff like that, which is what linemen does. They run I form, they hand it off between the tackles, and then they run play action, and sometimes they drop back into gun, for like third and long situations, and, just play I'd say a pretty 90s style of football if I had to pinpoint exactly where, lineman is at and whatnot. And Marks is important for both sides of the football in that equation. And, for my little write down here, I say Marks the Monster was a consistent problem against the run game. And, it's just true. He was a nightmare for quarterbacks. His strength and power rushing consistently called doubles and even at times triple teams with little success, honestly, with a guy who pushes piles and pile drives ball carriers once he finds them. I have his tackling at an 8.4. He's very good at consistently wrapping up and, driving through those tackles. He's my second highest rated tackler on this list. His run stopping, 8.7. Power rushing, 8.4. Just an absurd amount of power here. And yet all of this does not stack up to his strength category that I have at an 8.9, which is tied for the highest in this top 5. He is not being pushed back by multiple people. That's ridiculous. And I think that that's an easy thing to watch when watching, 1A, 2A, 3A, or anything like that, where some higher classification fools that think they're better than they actually are like, oh, well, we're better because the town. No. That's not how it works. They're still studs in small towns, all right? They just have less depth than other classifications, and that's the difference. And these 1A schools are throwing all of their depth at Trayton Marks. They're trying everything and still not finding a lot of success. I do want to say that he has a couple of hand fighting / finesse moves here, so that came in at a 7.7 here. And, his speed also shines on special teams, by the way. I don't know if you saw this in his film, Coach V, but I had to notate it. He's beating other players down the field. Now, I understand there's different assignments, and the fastest players are definitely playing contain. But still, it's kind of nuts that he also kind of looks, in person, honestly, a little bit heavier than 210, if I'm being honest, probably 215. And he just moves very, very well at his height and his size and whatnot, which kind of also plays a little bit into his agility, which I'll get to in just a second. But, he's somebody that you must game plan for and around. Thinking about his areas of improvement here, I have his release / first step at a 7. I think that it's fine, but I do think that there was some hesitancy this year, getting off the ball a little bit and, also kind of rocking sometimes. So that's why, it's still at a 2-star. He still gets off the ball very, very quick. I just don't know if it's as consistent as Coach V was alluding to as his junior year. And then agility / footwork wise, I have at a 7.3. I think that he does move pretty well, but also sometimes he looks like he's lumbering around, honestly, where he's kind of swaying back and forth here left to right, just kind of changing direction a little bit. So I think that he could still become just a little bit more, I guess, loose side to side and turn wise. So opening up those hips, I think, is something that he can work on just a little bit. But at a 7.3, it's still graded, I think, fairly accurate or, fair. His pass coverage, I didn't even really bother to put red on this. It's at a 5.7, just because I wouldn't really drop him back in coverage. But he is somebody who has made interceptions and can get a hand up and paw the ball down and whatnot at 6'4" at that frame. And he wields that size very, very well. So he can still make an impact in that area of the game here. And so when you add all that up, along with hit power at a 7.8, he's sitting at a 77.9. And with Simon's score, sitting at a 78.25 here. Now, I'm going to just hop in here just a little bit, and then Coach V, I'll give you a chance to rebuttal, and add on to this point here. Now, Trayton here, he only has 30 followers on Twitter. Literally, when I went out and talked to him at the end of last year's Strasburg Lyman game, I was like, hey, man, where's your film? What's going on here? And so I had to be like, yeah, you got to, put things together. You have to have a social media presence. You have to, be findable for scouts so that way you can play on the next level. And he didn't seem too concerned about it because he was definitely focused on just letting his pads play for himself and speak for him. And he was already talking to some D2s last year as a junior. Now, looking at this year, I can't find any offers that he currently has, but I know that his older brother went to South Dakota State of Mines. But I really think he's a D1 guy. I mean, maybe not. I don't want to say, like SEC level, but I think that he's somebody who can make an impact, in like Mountain West competition and what kind of is the group of five. I realize what you said. It's a little different these days with more like a power 3 and whatnot, but I think that Trayton has that next level D1 ability. I think that for sure he should have some FCS offers, if I'm being completely honest. I think that that is the level of football that he would succeed soonest and best at if I had to project. Now, Coach V, with these projections in mind, as well as a reaction to my scores, what do you have to say to counter some of the things I said and kind of also build off of where you see Trayton's future going? I mean, let's be real here. He's not getting looks mainly because he's a 1A guy.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And I mean, I'm also going to be honest, just looking at these grades that you and I both have, which are pretty similar here. First off, for most of my grades, I think all of them except for 3 are 8s and up. That's how well-rounded of a player he is. And even then, I feel like, I'm just being real, I feel like some of our ratings are getting affected by how he was, game planned for this year, just plain and simple. And it's not like, oh, well, if you can't beat triple teams on the 1A level, then you can't beat 101 to the 5A. No, that's definitely not it either. It's just like, I mean, it's tough to put up those numbers on the 1A level when you are getting game planned for so hard week in, week out. And if he was treated like any other player, like, he'd be wrecking havoc. If he was on the 4A level with how they don't game plan for any pass rushers at all, he would probably have breaking Marcus Howard's record of 20 plus sacks. I'm just going to be honest with you. Remember when 4A allowed that to happen, Kodey, 2 years ago, and just let a dude come out of nowhere and have 25 sacks or whatever it was on the season? He could do that. Who
you can't miss because, I mean, Marcus Howard was 6'5", almost 6'6", 220 pounds, and Trayton Marks, he would eat a ton of guys' lunch on other levels in one-on-one. I mean, for real. I mean, I feel like it would take some of the best tackles in the state to be able to handle Trayton one-on-one. For real. Especially with his strength. Because pound for pound, he might be like, he's one of the strongest prospects in the state. Pound for pound. Easily.
He weighs 20 pounds less than pretty much the next guy on this top 5 list. And I would still consider him stronger than everyone on this list. That's the insane part. And so, yeah, he's getting looked because he is 1A. But don't get it twisted. Get him in a D1 situation, and he will play like a D1 player. Straight up. Because that's who he is. And I agree. And I am begging UNC, please offer him a full ride. Not a PWO, because that's a little, I mean, he lives in Lyman, and I feel like that's a lot to ask out of him. But please offer him a full ride. Because this could be the guy on the other side of Marcus Howard, who, by the way, was all-conference. He was an honorable mention all-conference guy this year in the Big Sky. And he also made this list, I believe, in a similar situation a couple years ago as well. I want to say he was. I don't think he was number 1. Was he, Kodey? I don't think he was. I could be mistaken.
I want to say he was like 2.
Yeah, so in a similar situation here, in that 3-2 spot. And I think he could be the other guy on the other side of Marcus Howard. Give him 1 or 2 years to adjust, and he'll be right there. Easy. And he's definitely an FCS guy, and if he goes D2, he's going to wreak havoc on that level. Now, I don't know. Like, I don't know what his financial situation is like and whatnot, but this is a guy that could play D1, man. And we've had a number of other guys, from the 1A level who we really felt like were D1 guys. One of those guys was Tell Wade from last year, who Traden Marks played against, by the way. And Tell Wade's at Wyoming. He's doing his thing there. But the other one is Mason Clonch from a couple years ago from that Centauri team. And, he was a guy we really felt like was D1, but then just decided not to play college ball. And I'm not going to lie, I'm definitely nervous that might be the route for Traden Marks here if the recruiting doesn't pick up. But I just feel like he could play D1. And if he was to get a preferred walk-on, he would earn a scholarship pretty quickly. I'm not out of pocket for saying that. Am I, Kodey?
No, I honestly think it's bad for Colorado football if Traden Marks doesn't get to play college ball. I really do think it would be a huge shame, and honestly, it'd be a shame for the game of football. I'm not going to lie, because he's just that entertaining to watch. He's that dynamic, and, I think that on the next level, people are going to have a really hard time, and I think that he's somebody who could even draw double teams on the next level. And he's somebody who I also think is kind of versatile as well, because I think that Traden, especially if he buys into this strength and power rushing thing and then retains some of those hand fighting moves, I think this is somebody that you can bulk up as well and kind of play with where you place him in that front seven. So, yeah, no, I think that Traden absolutely should be getting looks on the next level. And, oh, man, you really broke up Mason Clonch and kind of like broke my heart just a little bit because he was an awesome running back. But, yeah, no, I agree that Traden definitely needs to get those looks. And, I mean, Unko, this is a guy that needs to be on your roster. Or FCS teams, this is a guy that this is a must-have recruit, honestly. And I mean, I'm going to be screaming this from the rooftops for the next guy as well, just because these guys are getting overlooked for things that honestly don't matter. Like, watch the film. It's there. Hopefully I'm not spoiling too much as well for the next one. But, yeah,
no,
that's Traden Marks.
Yeah, and he's such a great player. I mean, his legacy has been made, though. 2 state championships. He's been an all-PMC guy, a DPOY guy, 1 DPOY this last year. And then, the year before, I believe he was a runner-up. I mean, his legacy on the high school level here in Colorado has been made. And hopefully, will stay out there forever with what we've been able to document. But he is one of those guys that, I mean, if there was a Colorado High School Football Hall of Fame for football players, and not, just catering towards higher classification guys, I'm just going to put that out there, he would be on there easily, all PMC potential Hall of Fame if we ever get to making one. So just throwing that out there, he has the accolades, he has the skill. I mean, he just needs a chance. And it has to be a good one to get him out of Lyman and, get him into your program and whatnot. But I guarantee it, once he gets into your program, this is a guy that's going to be a force to be reckoned with no matter what. So we'll just have to see. But Kodey, speaking of guys that are forces to be reckoned with, this next guy was somebody that we both got to watch in big-time playoff situations this last season specifically, and the year before as well. So why don't you go ahead and introduce him and talk about him?
Yeah, speaking of potential PMC HOF guys here, this is out of Delta High School and also state champion here, Tucker Johnson, also a Dungeon Family 6-0 guy as well. And I'm just going to jump right into it here. He is special for a lot of reasons here, and his lowest grade that's not pass coverage is a 7.6. So that just shows you the caliber of player that we're talking about here. And something that I think is worth mentioning is, I'm actually going to flip this on its head. I'm going to talk about the areas of improvement first, and then get into all the green and good here, because there is plenty of it. Look, pass coverage, he's at a 4.9. I don't really know how I feel about dropping back Tucker Johnson at 6'3", 240 pounds. I mean, he's agile-ish. If it's maybe like some kind of weird stunt where you think the blitz is going to get there and confuse the offensive lineman, maybe. But not my first choice. But then climbing up the ladder here, Look, his tackling, it's at a 7.6. He does a great job of bringing guys down to the ground, wrapping them up, and slamming them into the turf. I just think that sometimes he does tackle, and by sometimes I mean pretty often, he tackles high, but, he's 6'3", so I'll try and overlook that just a little bit. And then, look, speed/finesse moves, I have at a 7.9 because this season he developed a deeper bag. With some quick strike hand fighting to ward off double teams and, also utilizing a rip, and he's shown like a spin move before. Not something that's, consistently something he could do, but with his hands, with his rip, with his swim, he's somebody who can get in the backfield consistently against other teams, no matter how they game plan for him. And I think that his speed/finesse is honestly just fine, especially at the size and frame that he's playing at. And I think that's what helps carry it just a little bit further. Now, continuing to climb up this ladder, hit power at an 8 and power rushing at an 8. He's somebody who just consistently gets a push on the line. And, with that, with his ability to wrap up, he does slam people into the ground. And I could definitely tell that he rattles some people. One of his hits actually in the state game was responsible for having one of Rifle's best players sit out for a couple of plays and recollect their bearings. And this is a constant story that he's capable of. And, he's somebody who is just a brick wall when ball carriers are heading towards him and they get flattened. He does not yield or give anything up in that regard. And then continuing to climb up this list, I have his first step and agility/footwork both at an 8.1. I think that he gets off the ball pretty well, honestly. And I think that, he's able to really shock the opposing lineman with how fast that first step is. And then agility-wise, I think that he's somebody who changes direction very, very well. I think that he's somebody who drives his feet very well and uses them to his advantage to get past opposing linemen. And he's somebody who plays sideline to sideline from the edge position. Let me repeat that one more time. Somebody who plays sideline to sideline at the edge position. He's making tackles on the boundaries across the field, still inside of that 5-yard range from the line of scrimmage. He's somebody who will chase running backs who try and cut back across the field. He'll chase them all the way over, and they're not getting away from him just because he is able to change direction and uses that kind of angle taking to a great extent. And that combined with his speed allows him to just make a ton of plays in the backfield as well. And, those are all at 8s, right? So that's already 4 scores at 8. Look, his size/frame, I really like. 6'3", 240 pounds, and very durable. Somebody who plays on both sides of the ball, I think, is something to kind of consider when thinking about frame. Size is one thing, frame is another, but this category also includes durability as well. And Tucker Johnson, I feel like he's somebody who I've never seen when I've seen him live or just looking through game film. He's not somebody who really misses a play, literally ever, which is pretty insane. And that taken into consideration, that's a very strong score for me at that 9. But talking about the field again, his run stopping and strength are his 2 highest categories here at an 8.5 and an 8.6. He does a great job of using his arms and reach to look into the backfield, and then he just chucks blockers out of his way. That strength as well is on display because he's another guy who's getting double teamed and chipped, and people are diving at his knees all the time, which has developed his agility/footwork because he'll get up and over him because teams are desperate looking for a way to slow him down and just don't find a lot of luck a lot of the time. So yeah, that's Tucker Johnson, and that overall score with all of those categories that I just listed out puts him at a 78.7. And I want to mention that he is a playoff riser here, which always bodes super, super well for my outlook on a prospect. And, he saves arguably his best performances for last. And while he's getting double teamed and triple teamed and teams are going the other direction for him, he opens up so many opportunities for his teammates to be playmakers, whether it's the linebackers or fellow linemen who I don't think are on the D1 path trajectory level that Tucker is, but get to make a ton of plays just because Tucker is eating up so much attention from opposing teams. It's just hard to ignore both in person and on the film. Coach V, I kind of went on a long tangent there. Also, Tucker, shout out Tucker. I finally got to meet him after state and got to interview him following that state game. So go watch that TikTok. He's an awesome kid, and he's somebody who's very, very excited to meet PMC because we have covered him for, I want to say, like 3 years is how long he's been on the field and making plays. And Delta, I mean, they've kind of always been a team that's been in discussion as well here around the pod and is a team that consistently competes. So now after that long tangent, now I'll finally pass it off.
Yeah, no, shout out Tucker Johnson. I wish I got to talk to him after the game that I got to watch, because I actually got to see them travel to Colorado Springs and play my alma mater, TCA. But, you know, I didn't want to hold him up because I knew they had a really long drive back, and I believe that would actually be the last time they would cross the mountains there for a big-time playoff game. So I didn't want to hold him up, you know, because I knew he was exhausted. But I do want to talk about that game real quick before going into my evaluation, because I definitely have to agree with everything you said. Look, he's a playoff riser. And when you need him to make a play, he's going to make a play. In those final seconds against TCA, a game that looked like was about to go into overtime. Now, I got to shout out Ty Reed. He had a great punt that put them on the 2-yard line, and that kind of set up this game. And then, you know, shout out TCA for not knowing how to coach sometimes and running a run play out of gun. But when I saw them line up in gun, I was like, this is a mistake, because you're already giving Tucker too much time, you know, to get out there and go make a play. And they ran it away from him, and he still got in the backfield and still got a safety and still won them that game, that rescued their chances, because they were playing such a bad game. Not the defense, but offensively they were playing a really bad game. And so he came through when they needed him to. And, you know, that really affected his grades here. And really this whole, like, from junior to senior year, he's made some leaps and bounds here, working with Matt McChesney, putting in that work. I know Matt loves him, you know, because he's so far out there, but he's putting in that work, getting everything in on time and whatnot as well, which is absolutely huge here. And, you know, that's, if you get that endorsement from Matt, that's really good enough for me. And for him to, you know, pop up from like 220 or wherever he was last year to 240 in 1 year, that's 20 pounds in 1 year. I respect it. You know, that's why his highest rating here, one of his highest ratings, is an 8.5 for size and frame. Gave him an 8.5 for tackling. He's a sure tackler. And then pretty much all his grades, except for 2 categories, are 8s and up. That's how well-rounded of a football player he is. Just plain and simple. And this is also a guy like Traden Marks and Austin Contreras, but more so similar to Traden Marks, who is getting triple-teamed, double-teamed, chipped like all the time here on this 2A level, and he still finds a way to go make plays. You know, that's how you know he's a good football player. Before I talk about, you know, my areas of improvements, I just want to go down the line here with my grades. Gave him an 8.1 for strength. That could honestly be a little bit higher here. I will acknowledge that. 8.2 for hit power. 8.1 for agility and footwork, like you said. Great sideline to sideline guy. 8.4 for release and first step. That has really improved, in my opinion, from junior to senior year. He has a great first step there that I think is going to translate really well to the D1 level, spoiler alert there. And then run stopping, 8.3, 8.2 for speed and finesse. He has some good hand fighting there that has really improved and will only get better. Now, Cody, do you mind if I go ahead and talk about my areas of improvements real quick here?
Send it, I did.
Okay. Just making sure, you know, just making sure. But 5, I mean, pass coverage, you already kind of touched on that. Definitely agreed. You probably shouldn't be dropping him back anyways. I don't think that's utilizing him correctly. So there you go. And then I gave him a 7.7 for power rushing. I see the vision here when he uses his power rushing moves, you know, his rips and getting good pushes and whatnot. But a lot like Traden Marks and Contreras sometimes, it's just not timed as well sometimes. And I think with him getting stronger and continuing to adjust to his body and whatnot, he's not quite used to, how should I say this, utilizing all his power and strength as correctly as he can. But, as he continues to fill in here and, get comfortable with this frame, I think that could definitely go up. So I'm not really concerned about that. Altogether, he's a 79 overall, just 0.2 points away from my number one prospect here personally. But, he's just a guy that's an all-around great player, 6'3", 240. He's a grinder. He puts in a lot of work. He's just a hard-nosed football player that, God, I can't emphasize enough how much I respect how much work he put in between his junior to senior, year. And he's a big reason why they won state as well. And he's put in all that work, and if he's able to take that jump from junior to senior year, you could expect him to have a couple more jumps in him from, high school to college, and then from rotational guy to potential starter. Is that fair to say, Kodey?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fair to say. And I think that looking at his recruiting right now, it's underrated. It's easy to say that it's underrated, seeing as how he only has offers from CSU Pueblo, Western Colorado, and Mesa. All fine and dandy, right? But this guy is an FCS player. Once again, somebody who also gets it done in the classroom. 3.9 GPA, so it's not like there's no red flags about this guy. He's a hard worker. He's a good kid. He's an awesome athlete. He's a multi-sport athlete, might I add, because he's been an all-state honorable mention in basketball as well, which is just another testament to his agility / footwork and even speed and overall athleticism. He's somebody who has already shown that he can bulk up like freaking crazy. He's somebody who has gas in the tank to hustle for a gazillion plays a game on both sides of the football and dominate on both sides of the football. He's somebody who, as an offensive lineman, was consistently getting pancakes and, eaten like it was, free pancake day on the offensive side. And then on the defensive side, never getting pancaked, despite getting multiple double and triple teams and beating all of them in a variety of ways with overwhelming strength, confidence, and, just technique as well. He's very fundamentally sound. He's a very refined prospect, if I got to be completely honest, compared to a lot of other guys. And I think that he's somebody who will only continue. I think that his ceiling is also so much higher as well. Looking across the board at a lot of these guys, he's somebody who I think can even climb to bigger heights as well, with the strengths that he has and with the abilities that he has as well, and with the drive. So I think that, this is an FCS guy, but I think that he could even knock on the door potentially of some of those larger programs as well. I'm looking kind of, at those Midwestern colleges, honestly, and I think that he'd be a great fit culturally and skill-wise for some of those defensive fronts. Am I getting ahead of myself here, or are you seeing what I'm seeing with this? And I think that, with some of the connections that we know that he kind of has at the extension of his fingertips here, I feel like this isn't a far cry from something that could potentially happen even. If people look.
Yeah, if they look. That's the big thing there. And you know how it is. Lower classification's always going to get disrespected. Colorado as well. That's just the truth of it, honestly. But he could play. He's extremely well-rounded, as well-rounded a prospect as you could hope for, really. There's not much more that you could really want out of a Tucker Johnson. And I think this is worth saying as well. You want to talk about his ceiling. I want to talk about his floor real quick here. He is, at the very least, a really good rotational player on a lot of FCS squads. He's somebody who could get in there, do his job, hold it down, and, be a good contributor on a lot of defenses out there, just plain and simple. If he's not being flashy and making big-time plays out there, he's at least holding it down so that somebody else can, which is really important to throw out there. He's just going to do a lot of things right for you, and is somebody that you want in your locker room to, just raise that floor, raise that level, and just have somebody that, can be just a great example of what the standard is for your program. I think that's pretty fair to say there. And as far as ceiling goes, I mean, he has a lot of potential here. Like I said, I'm not sure he's quite comfortable with where he's at right now as far as frame and stuff goes, but that's more of a consistency thing than anything. And he could continue to put on weight, and as what should I say here? As we're like projecting him forward here, the more reps he gets at his weight, at his desired weight and whatnot, the better he's going to be, plain and simple. And so we're just going to have to see about him. Unfortunately, the offers aren't there. If he goes to a D2, he could be a borderline starter, if not rotational player, as a true freshman, and I am pretty sure of that. He does scream like Colorado School of Mines. I'm going to be honest with you. The type of player that they are always looking for, that they've went to national championships with, he is that type of player, in my opinion. Now, if he wants to go there or not, that's a whole nother conversation. And I think, Kodey, you and I are very familiar with that. Well, not with that route personally, but with other guys having to weigh in on that route. Isn't that right?
Yes, we are. But, I think part of, I want to say part of it because it was, smaller classification and because they both wore green. I always, or I would sometimes swap in my head like Eli Krawchuk and Tucker Johnson. And Krawchuk ended up going to Mines as well, and does kind of fit that bill and that build of a player that they look for. And they were both similar in their physicality on both sides of the football. So I don't think that that's a far stretch of something to pitch. And, it's a successful football program as well. So that is continuing to do very well in the regular season and make postseason appearances. And Tucker Johnson, he's from a line of winning. And, I think that that's worth taking into account when recruiting him as well. So, but Coach V, do you have anything else to add on to Tucker Johnson before I talk about some of the guys that just narrowly missed this list? And then I'll give you the opportunity to introduce our number one, our numero uno this year.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything else to say. I'm just hoping that he gets his opportunity, just like Traden Marks, being from a small town, to go play high-level football, because he is a high-level football player. But, Kodey, why don't you go ahead and talk about some of our honorable mentions here that I'm sure a lot of our fans are probably clamoring for at the moment.
Yeah, no, there's some really big names on this list as well, and there are some, tough cuts to make here. But we did grade pretty intensely this year. So I want to say that on this list, probably the biggest name, I would assume, is, or one of the bigger names, is Nkongolo Wakalanji. Got to see him play live. He's solid. He's the best, pass coverage guy on this list out of any of the prospects that we looked at, and is asked to do a lot, but, is just kind of unrefined in most areas. And there's not, one thing that he just, dominates at. And, I think that that's kind of what kept him off this list a little bit. Another one who's PMC fam to an extent is Peyton Garrett here, the kind of traditional 4-3 end or edge out of Lutheran High School. Had a really good season, significantly improved in a handful of areas from last season, but, just probably needs a little bit more work, maybe one more year to get some things down pat, but could be a D2 guy. Nick Long out of Heritage. He is more of just a linebacking athlete, honestly, watching him. So that's kind of where that fell. Brody Van Cleve is somebody who I had a fun time watching just because his agility and footwork is very cool, but just lacked in some other areas and whatnot. Ian Champafy, one of the biggest postseason risers at multiple positions for Moffat County, got considered for this list, but I kind of think that he's a little bit more of a tight end on the next level. Keyshawn Caesar is another guy. He is out of Thomas Jefferson, so we took a look at him as well. And then Coach V, you also took a look at Jack Moran and George Patterson as well. Both those guys sitting in that 74 range. So shout out to all those guys, all those honorable mentions. And without further, and unless you want to add on anything to those HMs, go ahead and do that, and then tell us who our best edge player is out of the class of 24 here in Colorado.
Don't got too much more to add on, but a lot of great players who were just barely off the list here. Nick Long and Peyton Garrett were just outside for me, along with Keyshawn Caesar as well. They'll find a home. I know one of them might be looking at our alma mater in Northern Colorado, and I think that would actually be a great person to bring on as well. But anyways, let's go ahead and get to our number one edge rusher here in the class of 2024 in Colorado, and it is Valor Christian's Alex Jordan, the 6'4", 240-pound edge rusher. Okay, before we go into the film breakdown part of it, I gotta tell a quick story, because I'm always gonna remember this, because this was basically our first interaction 2 or 3 years ago with Alex here. But Kodey, you and I went after Valor pretty hard here. And, I'm always going to respect Alex for this. And this is how I knew that he would be probably one of my favorite Valor Christian players to cover ever. But he came up to us at Team Full Gorilla tryouts, and he was real nice about it, a little shy. He was like, hey, man, we're not all like that and whatnot. And, we respected it. We respected him for it, and obviously more TikToks came out after that, but I felt like we always had a good relationship. We've talked a bit as well. Now, that's not to say there's any favoritism here, because he's a heck of a football player. And it's interesting, because a couple years ago, originally, he was more, or at least I viewed him, more as a tight end. And then, Brett McGatlin came in, the offense changed a little bit here, and not that he was getting utilized at tight end anyways, and so he kind of moved over at defensive end and made a really big impact there. And so let's go ahead and talk about it, because he is our number one guy for a reason. And so I gave him an 8.7 for size and frame. That's one of his highest grades here. He's 6'4", 240 pounds. I mean, dude, that's as D1 as it gets. And I'm not just talking about FCS Group of 5. There's a lot of Power 5 edge rushers who are literally that exact same frame there. 6'4", 240, a little bit longer than some of those guys, which is a good thing as well, though. So there you go there. Absolutely love that, and he uses his frame extremely well. I gave him an 8.5 for run stopping. Like a lot of the guys on this list, this is probably one of our best run stopping edge rushers list ever, I would say. He holds down that edge extremely well and funnels in a lot of guys. Looked at his film against Cherry Creek last year, which is really telling, because you have a lot of D1 or Power 5 linemen on that squad, and he held his own extremely well. And not only did he hold his own, but he won a lot of matchups over there. And that should be saying something, considering they have a Power 5 offensive line basically over there at Cherry Creek. And so that was really telling to me, just seeing him battle and win a lot of those matchups. And so I gave him an 8.5 here. It definitely could be higher, but I think this last season he kind of struggled a little bit more than I anticipated. And we'll talk about that here a little bit later. But there you go there. Those were his highest grades. As far as pass rushing goes, his highest pass rushing grade was an 8.4 for speed and finesse moves. He's got some moves. When he's alone off that edge, he could really burn an offensive tackle and just get in that backfield so quickly. I mean, he has a great motor. He has some really precise moves out there as well, which I think is even underrated to an extent here. But I mean, he just uses that 6'4", 240-pound frame extremely well to get separation and to get into that backfield consistently, whether it's on passing plays or running plays. Just to be quite frank with you. And as far as I guess floor goes, gave him a 5 for pass coverage. I mean, he's not really asked to drop back and cover a whole ton, which I think is fair. Most of these guys aren't. But all the other ratings are 8s and above here. And so, Kodey, I'm just going to go ahead and throw it to you. What's your evaluation of Alex Jordan here? For me, I mean, he's a well-rounded player at 6'4", 240 who made a lot of noise against some of the best offensive linemen this state has seen. Is that fair to say, Kodey?
It absolutely is fair to say, and it was really fun to witness and everything like that, honestly, with Alex. And yeah, I totally spaced out on that until you brought it up. So shout out CTE. But, Alex, he really was. And I think that part of what he took away from that conversation is kind of like a desire to change that narrative, not with words, but with action. And he did exactly that, honestly. And that even speaks further volumes to the respect that I have for him and everything that Eagles team that, was the state runner-up. Very different looking Eagles team that was a state runner-up the following year from that conversation and that whole standoff that we had and whatnot. But Alex here, let's go ahead and talk about the good here. Strength and run stopping, 8.9 and 8.7. Look, right off the bat, his control, balance, reach, and size are wildly imposing. He has strength to take on multiple blockers and still get a push or clog up lanes, which is fantastic because, look, run stopping isn't necessarily always tackling the runner, but when you move the entire line of scrimmage or you move the entire blocking scheme and force a running back to cut back to where the rest of your team is because people are dogging you, that is a part of run stopping as well, which is why he's tied for the highest run stopping on this list at an 8.7 for me. So definitely that 3, almost 4-star, basically 4-star-ish talent in that department. Strength-wise, obviously he's pushing the entire line of scrimmage, and he's also showing his strength without maybe like the best position, I guess. Like, his outward extended arm is so freaking strong and can hold off, opposing linemen that are also huge. Like, that means something for that single arm to show that strength. And then once he gets 2 arms on you, what are you supposed to do, honestly? And so those combined with, some other things that he does well, his power rushing was the next highest grade for me at an 8.4, just because, when he gets that initial bull step on, opposing linemen, they don't really have an answer for it. And why would they with his combination of strength and size? And he's also pretty quick, honestly. He can get off that edge and, get into that backfield and cause some havoc. And I think a huge part of that is his first step, which I have rated at a 7.9. He's also the second hardest hitter. There we go. On this list for me at an 8.1. He just levels opposing players, and, I think that he does a really good job, and honestly, his tackling, can be high, but I think that, his ability to tackle people with one arm is definitely something to notate with his tackling. It kind of helps with his strength, obviously listed at that 8.9, but his tackling and his wingspan and his tackle radius are all things that are very impressive and kind of help that tackle score sit at that 7.8 as well. And I have this in red, but it really shouldn't be in red. His agility/footwork, I think that he moves pretty well for his size and frame, so I have his agility/footwork at a 7.8. Sure, I think it could be ironed out in some ways, but I think that when you're playing with the level of violence that Alex Jordan does on the defensive side of the football, you're allowed to be a little clunky, honestly, when you're dropping the hammer the way that he is against opposing teams. Now, like I said, to kind of transition into some areas of improvement, honestly, I think that, while he is fine getting off the ball, getting off fast, I don't think he has like a super deep bag of speed or finesse moves. But, it's still sitting at a 7.5, which is fine. And then his pass coverage is at a 5.9 because he does bat passes out of the air, but you're using them wrong if you're dropping them back anyway. So if I run down my list, which is speed/finesse at a 7.5, tackling 7.8, run stopping 8.7, power rushing 8.4, release first step 7.9, agility footwork 7.8, hit power 8.1, strength 8.9, pass coverage 5.9, and size/frame 8.9 for a 79.9 overall. Seems pretty reasonable. Simon and I vary on some things, but I think that's something interesting to note here, and I want to kind of set you up to elaborate on this, Coach V, because you're the one who brought it up, is his size/frame. It seems weird, right, that I'd have somebody who's an inch taller than Tucker rated 0.1 point below him in size/frame, right? But, Coach V, where do you think that comes from with his frame being rated, at least for me, lower than Tucker's, considering that durability is a part of this category.
Well, it's because of durability. That's you said it. That's why. We do keep that in mind when grading size and frame, and I think this last senior year was a little tough for Alex here. He barely just got over, like he barely just made our limited games required to make this list here. I think he had 8 where he recorded stats, at least according to Max Preps. He had 8, which is our limit right there. And yeah, I kind of just feel like this season he struggled with some injuries. And if it weren't like, I don't know if they were like serious injuries, but it kind of felt like there were some lingering things where it just looked like he was maybe a step too slow, or the strength wasn't as explosive. And so usually when that's the case, it's not because somebody just regressed out of nowhere, especially this young in high school. It's usually because, you know, there's some sort of lingering injury there that is preventing them from getting that full range of motion or whatever it is. And so I know he has been struggling with some injuries, because I know he definitely missed some games. I went to that Mountain Vista game, and I feel like I didn't see him play. I was trying to look out for him, but I didn't really see him out there a whole ton. And I don't know if he didn't play at all, or if he was just not rotated in, but obviously this defense is better with him in there. So honestly, I just don't know what happened. But, you know, injuries is definitely a concern, and I feel like that might actually affect some of his recruiting as well. I mean, he's getting up to 240. He, you know, gained some weight over the offseason. Hopefully it's not that, and if it is, then maybe he just needs to lean up a little bit more. But that's nothing a college offseason program can't help him figure out, hopefully, on the next level, because I really do think he is a D1 guy. Kodey, do you want to go ahead and talk about outlook here, since I kind of introduced it as is? Assuming he's, you know, fully healthy, I think he's definitely a D1 guy, is what I should clarify there.
Yeah, and Alex Jordan is actually the only player on this list who is currently committed. He is committed to Penn right now. So, you know, I think that obviously a lot of these guys' future is kind of up in the air, but not really Alex's here, who is the only committed guy here. And I do think that a red shirt would do him some good. Just take some time off, honestly. And, yeah, make the most out of that offseason. Get in the weight room. Get into, you know, the cardio program and whatnot, and just see what you can work out in that regard. And, yeah, I think that it's a good thing with his health this season that he is committed already, and that, you know, it can be a little bit more of an investment. Now, obviously, Penn, definitely more on the educational side of things, but I do think that he can be, you know, a potential, like, all-conference player, given the right situation and given the right development for, you know, the Quakers here in that Ivy League conference. So I think that it's good that he's committed. It's obviously, you know, more focused on education and whatnot, which I think is something to consider. But I do think that he could be a very solid player in that league. And, or, you know, if he does get a chance to ball out in that league, there could be potentially opportunities even beyond that, depending on where he's at with, you know, schooling and stuff like that, and what he's exactly looking for. But I do think that he is in, well, obviously anybody who's committed is in a pretty decent situation, but I do think that committing and not risking, you know, anything going awry prior to the season or anything like that, and with how the season went, I do think that he's in a good spot to just take a year, get acclimated, and, you know, kind of be more of a traditional, I guess, college football career.
I like how you said educational focused. But, yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's an Ivy League, isn't it? So he's going to need the year anyways to, you know, adjust. And so that's fine. And maybe not like take, you know, time away from football, but take time away from, you know, focusing on a season. And this way, you know, he could focus on himself a little bit more, you know, just figuring out like, okay, where do I want to play at? Where do I feel best at? and then just going from there. I legitimately think that he's a D1 guy. You know, he has the frame to play D1. He has the talent to do it. But, you know, I also get it. You want to get a good education out there, get set up for life, especially after football, too. And, you know, if there's anything that goes on with football, then it's going to go on, right? And I do agree, he can be an all-conference guy. He can be a guy that could just, you know, rack up all the accolades if he's playing at a really high level and if he's feeling good as well from a health standpoint, too. So we'll just have to see about that. But no doubt about it, he's been one of the best edge rushers in the state of Colorado these last couple of years. And just being able to see him continue to develop and turn into such a monster off that edge has been special. You know, he's definitely somebody that, you know, took what we had to say to heart. And obviously we don't take that personally because we love seeing him succeed. And he's a dog out there. You know, he's one of those guys that, you know, people are going to look at and be like, man, he probably shouldn't be playing on this level. He probably should be at a group of 5 or power 5, if not an FCS at the very least. So just throwing that out there. You know, but really excited for his future and looking forward to, you know, seeing him ball out for Penn here soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Kodey,
I
go ahead and wrap
think
us up here. Don't have too much more to say, but this was a really good list of edge rushers here. I loved the variety of, you know, where in the state that we were able to find some of these guys, you know.
Yeah, no, for sure. It was a lot of fun watching through this list and, you know, getting this compiled. So just as a refresher, the top 5 seniors at the edge rusher position here in Colorado in the class of 2024 went as followed in ascending order, starting at 5, Jordan Ochoa out of Castleview, Austin Contreras at 4 out of Green Mountain, number 3, Trayton Marks out of Lyman High School. Number 2, Tucker Johnson out of Delta High School, both those guys being state champs. And Alex Jordan at number 1 out of Valor Christian High School. So, thank you so much for listening to this episode, as well as our other top 5 episodes anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc., as well as being posted to YouTube. Make sure that you are subscribed or following, depending on the platform, and that you have notifications turned on to get notified whenever new episodes come out. To see the sweet graphics that come with these episodes, you can see those as well on our social medias, whether that's Twitter/X at Playmaker Corner or on Instagram at Playmakers Corner, as well as Facebook, that is Playmakers Corner there as well. So be sure to follow us for all of those, as well as a lot of other content that we have going on as well, a lot of graphics that we make that kind of go outside of the realm of episodes, and continue to stay tuned for awesome events and, you know, kind of highlights and whatnot that we share through those or through our TikTok as well, that'll have little description or summary videos of these top 5 guys. And also, you know, you feel free to swipe through there and see what the highlights look like for all of the state championships this past season in Colorado high school, or just throughout the regular season, some things that we really enjoyed watching and getting to see. So those were, you know, kind of all the places to find us there on TikTok, obviously at Playmakers Corner. And thank you so much for rocking with us. I have been one of your co-hosts for this episode, Kodey Stauffer.
And I've been the other one, Simon Voyanos, aka Coach V, and Mark's Rules.
Mark's Rules.